Hi, everybody. Dr. Larry, the author of Save Baseball, a prescription for the major leagues. You can find my book anywhere online, and who knows, maybe at a bookstore as well. So, speaking of which, I had the opportunity this last weekend here in the Valley of the Sun to do a book signing, and it was a lot of fun. And one of the things I really love about book signings is being able to talk to you, the fans. So it's interesting when you set up like I did in a bookstore and people are cruising by going, baseball? Like what's going on here? And then you start a conversation with somebody. And much like when I wrote the book, I found that people love to talk about baseball. And so I just started jotting down some of the things that I was talking to the fans about, and I thought I'd share some of those with you. But the best part of this day was not necessarily, selling some books and, you know, meeting fans, although that was awesome. The best part of my day was the fact that my kids surprised me, drove in from California and showed up to my book signing, and that was extremely special for me. And so I was very grateful to be able to spend some time with my adult kids this weekend. Um, and who knew they were coming? They not only kept it a secret, but the store manager at the local Barnes and Noble did the same as well. So thank you, Cheryl. Appreciate you. So here's a couple of things that came up, and I thought it'd be interesting to share those little anecdotes with you. First of all, somebody came up and said, "Oh, save baseball. I bet you're all about anti-analytics, right?" And I said, "Not exactly." First of all, this book isn't about my opinion. It's about the opinions of those that know a lot more about baseball than me. Remember, I'm a former sportscaster, covered the Angels and Dodgers back in the day, also had a talk show on a sports network, and was a minor league broadcaster for a number of years. So I know about baseball. I have pretty good, pedigree in understanding the game, very close to it for many, many years, but I would never say that I knew more about baseball than the people that I interviewed, the general managers, the players, the former players, those that work for Major League Baseball teams, to name a few. So when this gentleman said, "Oh, you're anti-analytics," I bet I said no. And in fact, I'm going to quote a couple of people I interviewed for the book, namely Trey Hillman, who a former major league manager with Kansas City, also a 20-year major league coach. He also managed in Japan, won a championship, managed in Korea in the KBO, won a championship. Nobody's done that. So Trey's a good friend, but somebody, not only is he a friend, but I hold him in very high regard when we talk about the game of baseball. So I remember having a conversation with him not only during this project, but recently when I was visiting him not too long ago. And we do talk about analytics. And he likes to say, and I agree, it's very good information, but it shouldn't be the only thing we base our decisions on. So analytics has a place in baseball. I think it also um, is reminiscent of a sport that's always been statistically heavy. And remember, probably like you, when I was a kid, I knew the statistics because I had baseball cards, right? And that's how we learned about baseball. Granted, there's a whole lot added to the list of what we looked back in those days, which was average and number of home runs and RBIs. Now we've got so many things. Sometimes you look at the scoreboard if you're at a game and you're like, I don't even know how they calculate that and what's the relevance of that data. But nonetheless, this book is not anti-analytics. Although talking to people like Joe Madden, and Joe and I had a great conversation around it. And, he likes to say that these analytics folks are the mathematicians, and it's not really a compliment when he mentions it. And I understand because when he was managing the Angels, his most recent stint as a manager, and it's been a couple of years now, was basically told what to do by the mathematicians. And that's not okay. I mean, Joe Madden knows baseball. I mean, he took the Rays to the World Series, and he won the World Series with the Cubs. And as a Cub fan, I'm forever grateful to Joe. And he spent 30 years with the Angels, managing, coaching, and playing before he ever got the job in Tampa Bay. The guy knows baseball. Some math nerd sitting in a computer is telling Joe Madden what to do and who to put in his lineup and when to pull pitchers. That's when it's crossing the line. So we had that conversation. The other thing is, I had somebody come up and say, "Save baseball? What are you saving it from?" And I said, "From becoming a niche sport." That's my concern. And it's on its way, sadly, to becoming a niche sport. Do you know, and maybe you do, that soccer is now the fourth most popular sport in America, surpassing the NHL? And guess what? It's right on the heels of Major League Baseball. So baseball is in a decline, hemorrhaging fans by the millions from the last decade plus. Fan interest is down. I don't care what they want to spin in terms of everybody's making money. Well, they're making money off these TV contracts that are not sustainable. Ask the Padres about that. And we know Bally's has gone belly up. So these TV contracts are not lucrative in every single market. So what else did we talk about? This was I talked to a 20-year-old kid. I can say that because I'm far from 20. And we had the conversation about baseball, and I love to talk with the younger generations and talk about them and how they fit into this. Because my son, who's now 24, is the reason I wrote this book. Because when he was about 16, he told me baseball's boring, and I'm like, what? I started to think about generations. So I talked to this 20-year-old kid, and I said, "So, I mean, who's your team?" And he brought up something really interesting. He said, "Well, I'm not really a fan of a team. I like players. I like Freddie Freeman, for example." And he went on to tell me that a lot of his friends, same age group, same generation, are leaning more toward following players versus teams. I thought that was really interesting, and I say it's okay. Just be a fan of the game, right? I mean, I'm okay with that. I just thought that was really interested. And I said, "Well, how come they're?" I said, "Are friends of yours not baseball fans?" And he said, "Yeah, a lot of them aren't." He said, "We're interested in esports." And he said, "For those friends of mine, for them to learn baseball because they didn't play it growing up, it was really hard and something they just don't want to invest the energy in." Thought that was really interesting too. So that was a conversation with a 20 something year old kid. Another gentleman stopped by. His name's Johnny. Had a pretty cool Dodger hat on, and we were reminiscing and started talking about. We were about the same age, I think. Johnny, I think, was a little younger than I am, but we started talking about where you from. He was from the Valley in L.A. I'm from Orange County. We grew up following the Dodgers. He still held on to that affinity for them. And we talked about some of the players we loved watching as kids. His favorite, Steve Garvey. I love the Garvey. In fact, you know that because I talked about how I think the Garv should be a Hall of Famer. And so we started reminiscing about some of those Dodger days. And so he kind of left my table and he circled back a couple of minutes later and he said, "So are you a Dodger hater? Is that what this book is about?" And I said, "Absolutely not. In fact, I suggested he follow and subscribe to my channel here on YouTube because, as you may know, if you're a fan of mine and a regular viewer, you'll know that I recorded a video maybe the early part of spring training, maybe February sometime, talking about don't hate the Dodgers because they're spending, darn near $400 million this year. And the reason I said that, to remind you if you haven't watched it or if you did and you forgot about it, and I told Johnny, anybody, any team can do what the Dodgers are doing. So do not hate them. Your team is choosing not to invest in it. Now, let's be real. Let's be fair. The Dodgers have really deep pockets. I mentioned TV contracts a moment ago. Theirs is extremely lucrative. So yeah, they got more money than a lot of us and a lot of our favorite teams. But guess what? Every team is owned by a billionaire. and they're making a decision not to invest in the team to the degree that they could. So that was a really interesting conversation I had with Johnny as well. The last thing I'll leave you with is a conversation I had with a lady who's a Giants fan. It's interesting when you live in a place like Southern California where I grew up, not many people are from there initially. Um, it's really true here in the Phoenix area. There's hardly anybody's from Arizona. And she said, I'm from the Bay Area. I used to love watching, Willie McCovey and Willie Mays when I was younger, and Will Clark, loved Will the Thrill. And I said, so tell me, like, are you a baseball fan today? And she said, yeah, I watch it on TV, but, I can't really afford to go to the games. And I would say this, the Diamondbacks, I would think, my small sample size of coming here really almost every summer with my kids, I never thought the Diamondbacks tickets were super expensive, but she brought up something I write about in my book. The cost of going to a game for a family of four is about $250. And if that number rocks you a little bit, you can break it down how I did in my book, and I'll just kind of give you an idea. Well, four tickets, four dogs, four sodas, couple of beers, a couple of souvenir caps, parking. Yeah, 250 is probably a deal. And when you think about, my gosh, they play 81 home games, and I'm not one here to say let's, chop that season down, but how relevant is one game out of 80, 81 home games? And think about this. When I was at the game the other night on opening day, a lot of energy in that building. So kudos to the D-backs, um, you know, team ownership and, support staff because they put on a really good show and the fans are awesome. And, I think that, looking at that ballpark and knowing that the family of four that's spending 250, where do you think they're sitting? Behind home plate? No. Are they in the pool out there in right center field? Absolutely not. They are in the highest and furthest place from home plate that you can get. So, and that's not unusual, and that's not just the diamond, that's everywhere. So, it's really hard for a family to get engaged in the game when they are going to take out $250 minimum to go to the game and come away with some memories, but that's a challenge that teams are faced with. How do we make this affordable and how do we make 81 games relevant to today's fan? I think that that's a really interesting place to have a discussion around. So I thought I would just share some of those things I talked to the baseball fans with. Thank you for everybody who stopped by. Of course, my kids, number one, they were amazing that they surprised me. But also, I really look forward to having some more book signings. I would love to do one, for example, like at the Diamondbacks, because it's all baseball fans. I mean, it would be endless conversations around the game and around the topic. And just would really like to be able to do that. So that's my plan. Hopefully, I'll come to a place near you. Let me know if you'd like me to come and do a book signing in your community, and let's put it together. So, do me a favor, subscribe to my channel, like the content, comment. That's what I really like. Let's get in some conversation around what we're talking about, all these little nuggets here today, and share it as well. And as always, for the love of the game, I'm Dr. Larry.